Tupac's murder trial. The names, the claims, and the questions that remain nearly 30 years after Tupac Shakur was killed in Las Vegas. The case that once seemed destined to remain unsolved has finally reached a courtroom. And now one man is standing trial. His name is Duane Keffe D. Davis. Prosecutors allege that Davis helped orchestrate the attack that killed Tupac on September 7, 1996. Davis has pleaded not guilty, and he has since disputed some of the statements that helped bring the case back into the spotlight. But the biggest question isn't simply who was in the car that night. It's what really happened behind the scenes, and whether the courtroom will finally separate fact from decades of rumors. In August 2026, jury selection was completed in Las Vegas. The trial is now moving toward opening statements, nearly 3 decades after Tupac's death. And one piece of evidence is especially important: Davis's own words. For years, Davis spoke publicly about what happened that night. His 2019 memoir described his presence in the Cadillac involved in the shooting, and prosecutors say those statements helped revive a case that had gone cold. Davis now argues that his earlier accounts should not be taken the way prosecutors present them. That's what makes this trial so important. Because for the first time, a jury has to decide what those statements actually mean. But before the courtroom, there was another story that dominated the Tupac mystery for decades: the alleged rivalry between Death Row Records and Bad Boy Records. And that's where the name Sean Diddy Combs repeatedly enters the conversation. Davis has previously made allegations involving Combs, including claims about money and the possibility of a connection to Tupac's killing. Those allegations have been disputed, and Combs has denied involvement. So this is where the story needs an important distinction. A name appearing in interviews, documentaries, or court discussions does not automatically prove criminal involvement. The only person currently facing trial for Tupac's murder is Duane Davis. And that changes how we should look at everything else. To understand why Davis is on trial, we have to go back to the beginning. September 7, 1996. Tupac was in Las Vegas with Death Row Records co-founder Suge Knight. Earlier that evening, Tupac and his group had been at the MGM Grand for the Mike Tyson fight. Inside the casino, an altercation took place involving Tupac and Orlando Anderson, a member of the South Side Compton Crips and Davis's nephew. That confrontation became a critical part of the prosecution's theory. According to prosecutors, what happened inside the MGM Grand created the motive for a retaliatory attack later that night. Tupac and Suge Knight eventually left the area. Later, while they were traveling through Las Vegas in Knight's BMW, a white Cadillac pulled alongside them. Then the shooting happened. Tupac was critically wounded. Suge Knight survived, and the investigation that followed would become one of the most famous unsolved cases in music history. For years, investigators struggled to turn suspicion into a prosecutable case. Then Davis began speaking publicly. He acknowledged that he was in the Cadillac that night. He described the people around him. And prosecutors now argue that his own statements help establish his role in organizing the attack. Davis, however, maintains his innocence. That contradiction is now at the center of the trial. The prosecution does not have to prove that Davis personally pulled the trigger. Instead, prosecutors allege that he orchestrated the attack and provided the weapon used in the shooting. And that distinction is crucial, because the people believed to have been inside that Cadillac are no longer alive. Orlando Anderson, long associated with theories about the shooting, died in 1998. That means the courtroom cannot simply bring everyone involved into the witness box. Instead, prosecutors are relying heavily on statements, interviews, evidence, and Davis's own accounts of what happened. And that brings us to another major development. A Nevada judge recently ruled that a 2008 police interview involving Davis could be used as evidence at trial. The defense had argued that the interview should remain protected. The judge disagreed. That ruling gives prosecutors another opportunity to place Davis's past words in front of the jury. But there is still a much bigger question hanging over the case. If Davis is convicted, will we finally know who actually fired the fatal shots? Maybe not. The prosecution's case is focused on Davis's alleged role in orchestrating the killing, not necessarily on proving the identity of the individual who pulled the trigger. And that means the trial could answer one question while leaving another unanswered. Then there's Suge Knight. Knight was sitting in the BMW with Tupac when the shooting happened. He survived the attack and has spent years discussing the circumstances surrounding Tupac's death. His name has also appeared throughout various theories about the case. But once again, theories are not convictions. There have been claims over the years that Knight himself had motives connected to Tupac's future with death row. There have also been theories involving rival artists, record executives, gang members, and the larger East Coast-West Coast feud. But many of those claims remain allegations or speculation rather than established facts. That's exactly why this trial matters. For nearly 3 decades, the Tupac story has been surrounded by documentaries, interviews, books, theories, and conflicting accounts. Now those claims are being tested in court. And one of the most controversial names connected to the larger story is Diddy. Davis has previously alleged that Combs offered money connected to Tupac's killing. But that allegation has not resulted in criminal charges against Combs for Tupac's murder. So viewers need to separate what has been alleged from what has actually been proven. The same goes for Snoop Dogg. Snoop had a complicated relationship with Tupac during the final period of Tupac's life, and he later spoke publicly about tensions between them. But there is no established evidence from this trial showing that Snoop Dogg orchestrated Tupac's killing. His name appears largely because of the complicated relationships surrounding death row and the West Coast rap scene. And that's one of the biggest lessons from this entire case. Tupac lived inside a world where music, fame, street politics, business, loyalty, and personal rivalries were constantly colliding. Sometimes the public turned those complicated relationships into simple stories: good guy, bad guy, betrayal, revenge. But reality is usually more complicated. Tupac was only 25 when he was killed. His death changed hip-hop forever. And for almost 30 years, fans have been asking the same question: who was responsible? Now, a jury finally has the opportunity to decide whether Duane, Keffe D. Davis, was legally responsible for orchestrating that attack. Davis has pleaded not guilty. The prosecution says his own words, his alleged role in the Cadillac, and the events surrounding the MGM Grand confrontation tell a different story. The defense will have its chance to challenge that evidence. And when the trial reaches its conclusion, the verdict may finally provide something the Tupac case has been missing for nearly 3 decades. A decision based not on rumors, not on internet theories, not on documentaries, but on evidence presented inside a courtroom. Whatever happens next, one thing is certain: Tupac Shakur's story never disappeared. His music survived. His influence grew. And now, nearly 30 years after that night in Las Vegas, the case that seemed impossible to solve has finally reached its most important chapter. The question is no longer just what happened to Tupac. The question is whether a courtroom can finally prove who was responsible.